these two unique situations, wind and water, and then what about movement that occurs after you start your swing? And we'll look at those as we move farther down in Rule 18.2. Move or moved, I mentioned there are some challenging things to get your head wrapped around in the status of the ball. Move or moved is a legal fiction. Okay, we'll look at that definition and I will tie it into lost ball, which is also a legal fiction. I'll explain what that term means. When does a player address the ball? Really important to understand that definition. And then we'll look at gravity and its value, its impact on the rules before and after the player has addressed. And then the last two I have already mentioned, which we'll get to wrap up on Rule 18.2. We're really looking at player-specific situations. You're going to see a few examples of things other than the player moving a ball, but really the primary part of what I'm covering here is you, the player, a ball may have moved or did move, and you need to know what to do. So we're going to look at this first part. The general rule is you always replace. And one of these videos is actually quite a bit different than all the rest. I'll ask you to look at these and call that one out when we get through them. And if you know why, go ahead and explain why.
At the 17th hole, disaster. The leader is addressing her ball. She's putting for a birdie.
Turn the volume up, please.
And whoops, inadvertently moves the ball.
So, ball was moved. That was a practice stroke.
At the 1998 Players' Championship, Brad Fable's ball at rest on the 17th green was moved by Seagull, an outside agency.
By a seagull. There is no sound in this video.
This was at 12. This is Hudson Swafford in contention at this point, taking practice swings before his third at the par 5.
You will incur a one-shot penalty. You have to replace the ball.
Sorry, I'm going to show that one again because I think it's so funny. Watch the caddy when this happens.
This was at 12. This is Hudson Swafford in contention at this point, taking practice swings before his third at the par 5.
You will incur a one-shot penalty. You have to replace the ball.
So it climbs up over that ridge. It has a little bit of spin to it.
It's going to come right back to him. I don't understand the club selection there, Johnny. Either one of them. How about those two shots? They like kiss each other. They did.
So, did anybody see one that didn't quite fit the bill there?
Where you took a practice swing on the tee, the ball wasn't in place.
Perfect. Yeah, all the rest of these, we had balls in play that were moved. 18.2, and in fact all of 18 deals with balls in play that are at rest and that are moved. So that ball in the tee was not in play, it was at rest, it was moved. So it doesn't fit what we looked at. So Michael Campbell, John Paramore was almost falling out of his cart when that happened. He didn't have to go even get that same ball. He didn't have to put that same ball back on the same tee in the same spot. He's not tied to this rule whatsoever. It's no different than him dropping a ball, walking up to the tee. Okay? He doesn't have to do anything. But all the rest of these, we had a ball in play. Now some of them you saw a ball in motion, move a ball. Really what we were focused on more was the ball that was at rest, that was in play, that was moved. In all of those situations, we need to get that ball back to where it was. We have some exceptions. The seagull, as an example, a lot of you have seen that video. That ball actually ends up in the bottom of the pond on 17 in TPC Sawgrass. That player, because the ball's not immediately recoverable, doesn't have to put the ball back, but can actually put another ball back and substitute. But you need to get the ball back to where it was. And this all ties into the second great principle that we looked at before. You put your ball in play at the start of the hole, 18-2B, we have a rule that applies after you have addressed the ball. And we treat this situation completely opposite. You really need to figure this out as a referee. You need to determine this as a player. Did you address the ball? So let's look at the definition for addressing the ball and see what act will push us into 18-2B. The player has addressed the ball when he has grounded his club immediately in front of or immediately behind the ball. Wonderful video here. So I'm actually going to show this video again. We're going to stop it when the player is deemed to have addressed the ball, when that action actually happens. What do we mean by immediately in front or immediately behind? What we mean is right where this video stops is that moment. So the player put the club in this relatively close position, but it didn't meet our immediately standard. Once the club was put down, as you see here in the stop, that's addressed. That's what we mean by address. This player has just moved into 18-2B and has a very different shape. In 2012, the rules were changed, this definition was changed, and it removed any part of stance applying to addressing. It used to say grounded your club, completed your stance. The rules no longer have this part. Now they say whether or not you've taken your stance. And that makes a lot of sense. All that we really care about is this act of you putting the club so close to the ball that there's a really good chance that if it moves, you're the cause. That's the action that there was concern for. It didn't have anything to do with your stance. So where you put your club down, it's in that close proximity, you're on the hook, as a lot of folks will say, if your ball might move. So let's look at a ball that moves because of gravity. We're going to kind of play around on both sides of this addressing concept. This player has not addressed the ball. We're going to see what happens. Ball just moved. Now, picture your. Does everybody know what a false front is? False front of a green? Okay. So just to make sure everybody's clear with it, you have a green that's mostly, we'll say it's mostly flat, but the front of it has a very steep slope that runs down to the fairway in this case. If you're 150 yards out, you make a stroke. Really good shot. Flag pulls just over this false front, and the ball stops, and you're stay, and you have a good shot. It stops. Walk over, you put your club back in your bag, and you look up, and the ball's now at the bottom of the green, rolling off, it's into the fairway. I don't know that there's anybody in here, nor anybody that plays golf, that would think that, wait a minute, no, that ball stopped in the green, so I need to go put it back up there. We just accept that that's the way we play golf. That ball came to rest and moved, we just play it from there. Now, for whatever reason, and possibly because confusion around addressing, the closer you get to that ball, the more we get excited about whether or not we have to replace it. There's more anxiety there. The closer you get to the ball, sure, maybe you have more of an impact in it, but if the ball just moves and you didn't do anything to make it move, for address, you play the ball from wherever it goes to. Whether you're a foot away, you're just standing there, and it all of a sudden rolls off the green down to the fairway, there's no reason for you to put that ball back if you can't say, I did it, I was stomping around. If you were just standing there and moved, it's no different than you being 150 yards away. You're up closer to it, it just moves, you're going to play it from where it comes to rest. This is all happening before address. So this ball, we don't do anything with to replace it, we just play it from where it rolled to. What about gravity after address? A different situation here, you'll see Padre, he doesn't look too happy.
Oh my goodness gracious. What's happened there is Patrick's addressed the ball just as he's about to start his backswing. He's got a little forward press and the ball's moved. So what he has to do now is he has to replace the ball and then play it with a one-shot penalty. If he fails to do that, he would actually incur a two-shot penalty, so I'm sure he'll call an official over, but what a bad break for Patrick Harrington there.
So he has put his club on the ground immediately behind the ball. He's triggered 18-2B. Now the ball moves. We're going to say the player is deemed to have moved it. Even if the player swears up and down, or you swear up and down, I didn't do it, the rule's going to say, no, actually you did. We'll look at a decision here in just a moment. But you can think about this way. 18-2A, fire to address. The player's not addressed the ball. We have a question of fact why the ball moves. Your scales of justice, they're going to give you an equal shake. If it's 50% that you moved it, 50% that something else moved it, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. If it's 49, 50, 1, we're going to say that you moved it if you're the 51%. So it's a pretty even shake. We're going to say, yeah, pretty comfortable with this. Now, once you once you address the ball, things don't look too good for the player. You are deemed to have moved the ball. That's what the rule uses. You're deemed to have moved it. That's the difference between before and after address. The fact that you put your club that close to the ball now puts you on the hook. So if you can't point to anything except gravity, it's not going to help you here. You're going to be deemed to have moved the ball. So let's look at the exception to 18-2B. We know that if the ball moves after you've addressed it, you're deemed to have moved it, except if it is known or virtually certain that the player did not cause his ball to move. If something else moved your ball and you know, or you're virtually certain that whatever that was, moved your ball, this rule does not apply. You would apply whatever rule would apply to whatever moved it. So let's look at a situation here from Marion. Carl Peterson, this is on the 4th hole.
This is 5, Carl Peterson playing the par 4, set to hit his second shot, and a golf ball from the second pops in as he's about to start his downswing.
You don't see that every day at the US Open. So he had addressed the ball, and his ball was moved. The player is deemed to have moved the ball unless it's known or virtually certain that something else caused it to move. Well, I think we can all get very comfortable that we know why it moved. The other ball moved it. So this rule, 18-2B, does not apply. Carl's off the hook. He got away. We're going to look at 18-5, ball at rest moved by another ball. So he's going to put his ball back still. We always replace, but he's just not going to get a penalty. He still needs to replace his ball.
Craig, you get one question back here.
Sorry. I got a question. Totally hypothetical. But how about if that other player's ball moved his ball, he started swinging, whacked his ball, totally out of play? I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, obviously, if he hit the competitor's ball, it doesn't count.
Carl hits the other player's
No,
ball.
that we obviously know. But how about if because that ball moved his and he reacted and that it just couldn't stop the swing?
Well, we're going to actually see what happens with that. That's one of the special considerations. We're going to see what's going to happen with that. The strokes didn't count, and he's not going to need to replace the ball. And I kind of wish that would have happened because it would have been a fantastic video.
Carl.
Player's on a false front, and he walks up to the ball. As he's walking up to it, the ball moves and rolls off the green and into the water hazard. And he says, "My God, I caught that ball to move. I'm just going to replace it for one stroke penalty rather than take the penalty being in the water hazard and kind of from the other side of the hazard."
So this player wants to apply 18-2A because it suits his or her needs. You, being the committee, This exception, 18-2B exception, only applies when it is known or virtually certain that the player did not cause his ball to move. To meet this standard, it must be known or virtually certain that some other observable factor, wind, water, or another outside agency caused the ball to move. So here we have Padre Harrison at Masters 2010. We'll say this happened today. He has addressed his ball. See his pants swing around? So what happens here is we are virtually certain, maybe we don't know, maybe we're not that clear on it, but we're virtually certain that the wind caused the ball to move, the exception applies, there is no penalty. And this ball is not replaced. Play this ball as it lies. It's kind of a little bit of a hiccup, not replacing. Yes.
So even if he marked the ball, put it down, left the mark there, walked away, the wind blew it, he'd still have to play it from wherever it lies.
Yes. Is everybody okay if I pull out of this presentation and show a great video where that happened? Break form here real quick.
Who was it in Ireland who started this?
I don't know exactly what you're referencing, but there's a terrible situation that happened in Colin Montgomery, where he was out on the links course and he addressed the ball and he was like 40 feet away. The ball blew, but this has been something that we've been working on for some time.
that scenario, ball's front, I walk up, and my ball is at rest, mark my ball, pick in my pocket, now it's not in play anymore. I walk up, I put it back down again, I don't pick my marker, I leave it there. I turn around, now my ball's 20 yards down the fairway. I play the ball from there, even the ball is still marked on the green.
You put your ball in the play,
Right.
and
But I don't ruin my marker, it makes no difference.
makes no difference. That marker is only allowing you to take it out of play because the rule says you need to have it there or
You
you're
put it
going to
back
get one
down
stroke
again,
penalty.
whether it's there or not, it's not in play.
Marker has no relevance on the status of your ball. It just gives you the permission to lift it without penalty. That goes back to 20-4, balls in play when it's been placed.
But to the point when you were going to replace the ball in the fairway, you knew the spot, you can place it, but wouldn't a marker apply to that too, that you do have that defined spot? It just doesn't seem right. If you could identify the exact spot, I can see you did lifted the marker, just get an indication of the area.
So sorry, can you ask your, because we were dealing with wrong balls there, I just want to make sure I answer that.
Right, no, just that you do have the specific spot, that's the reason why that would not apply.
Why you wouldn't replace in a case where you had the marker down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the ball has been, we treat like situations alike. That's a very common phrase that you'll see in the rules, and that's trying to balance fairness across everything that happens. When you've put a ball into play, and there's a blemish. I knew exactly where it was because there was a blemish next to it. Sir, I know where I can put it back. Why won't you let me put it back? I had a marker down. Why won't you let me put it back? It's no different if you don't know the spot or if you do know the spot or if you're 150 yards away. It's a ball that's in play and it just moves. And the rules treat all of those situations alike. It'd be very difficult. I mean, think about spectators running up and marking balls to spot it. And we've actually talked through some of this stuff. If it comes to rest, should we fix that location? How do you know it comes to rest? A lot of difficult things. You don't want players racing across putting greens to put marks down. It's this act that's so much more comfortable. Pull it out of play, you put it back in play, deal with what happens. And again, in the situation I just pulled up as a sidebar, that was really, you should have suspended play rather than the rules need to change. In this situation, I heard some people mention this is 2010.
him say ball moved, he had addressed the ball. Rule 18.2b says if after you address the ball, if it moves, you are deemed to have caused it to move.
So Skip was just making sure, how close did you put it? Yeah, you addressed it. It moved. Yes, it moved. This is a calm day. Unfortunately for young Riley there, that's a penalty stroke. He needs to replace it. He was 2 down at the time. This is 16, the second round of the finals of the U.S. Junior Amateur. And you could hear even from the TV, they didn't see that. Cameras couldn't even see it, but he saw it. He knew it moved. This is what we do in golf. I think I just made a mistake. He had a penalty stroke, lost the hole. Runner up. So, last time, just to make sure you're totally clear, after address, if wind and water moves the ball, you never replace it. So, ball moved after Padre had addressed it, you play it from where it lies. Where it goes to. Just came out on the European Tour Instagram feed. Very windy day in Mallorca. The wind just moved that ball, obviously, it's kind of a stage thing, but it was prior to address. You play that ball as it lies. What does that mean? There, hold up. Good question, Wendy. Let me think about that one. Stage video.
What if, like, so now we know that it's wind or water close to the ball, and we don't incur a penalty. What if you deflect that ball by accident that's moving away?
You deflect the ball that is now moving because of wind.
Correct. Say you're, looking at the hole, maybe going through your putting motion or whatever, and the ball starts rolling, and you, by accident, maybe move your putter in a way that deflects the ball away from the natural movement.
So we're going to look up a few pages in the rule book. What we're looking at here is balls at rest that are in play that are moved. The next rule, Rule 19, deals with balls that are in motion that are accidentally deflected. That's pretty much all that will cover. So this accidental, my ball's in motion, I accidentally move it. There's going to be, as the player, a 1-stroke penalty, play the ball as it lies. The difference here is in this case, ignoring the wind and water, most of the time when a player moves the ball, you kick it. We knew where it was, we want to put it back, we want to get back to that spot. When a ball's in motion, we don't really know where it would have ended up. So we're just going to accept that deflection, we're going to play the ball as it lies, wherever it goes to. In this case, there'd be a penalty, very different if there's intentional stopping or deflecting. But the accidental one, 19 covers that. Just accept the result, and your player, you got one. Your pottery equipment, you got one. So wind and water, what do you think, Wendy? Flagstick.
Well, I'm just thinking, it was not a
Well, maybe it was. We have a decision if you lift and replace and then it strikes the flag, there's no penalty. I think, I don't know. If anybody else wants to look it up, feel free. There's a lot of great minds in the room. Stumped me.
I mean, if you play a second shot to three, okay, and like it's on the hole. And then all of a sudden you want to get in. You pull out from 2, and you would be no penalty. But if you put it once, then
I think we have a decision that talks about marking, lifting, replacing, and then it moves. Striking another ball, I believe is what that decision is based on. We say no penalty. But had the player not taken it out of play, that intervening act, I think we say it's a penalty. Perhaps we say the same thing here. You pay attention to that flag set though. If the player played from on the green, probably should have had his hanger pulled out in the first place.
yeah, but it wasn't ready yet,
I don't have a good answer. I need to think about that one.
I'll forget.
We're niggling around in the out of bounds area here, so good question though. Yes.
No, it's all right, you answered it. Thank you.
Yeah, the MGA quiz.
Any case for the water exception?
Well, the water exception more applies when your ball's actually in a stream. And that's really what that's about. It could be driving rain, but really what it's about is your ball's in a stream and it's moving. That's what we're referring to.
Water comes off the
I'm sorry, question? Yes.
In our rule school, Gene McClure was making the point that it's got to be an observable factor, and that was the entire thing. So whether it's rain dripping off the cap or wind or water or whatever, gravity is not observable, but everything else is. So even though the words observable factor is in the decision, he said it should have been written into the exception itself.
Yeah, it would have been nice if we wrote a lot into the exception, but we didn't. Live and learn. You notice that decision was actually put in at 14. It was split out of another decision, but when you see a decision right at the front of a rule, 18.2b/1, it's probably pretty important. We can go to that one and get to it quick because you might need it. Okay, this gets to the question that was asked in the back and up here, Carl Peterson. What if he finished that stroke? What do we do? Well, both 18.2a and 18.2b have this same language. The ball must be replaced unless the movement of the ball occurs after the player has begun the stroke or the backward movement of the club for the stroke and the stroke is made. So I'm going to remind you what stroke is. That's this forward movement, intention of striking at. And then that next bullet point is you're in your backward movement and you complete the stroke in both of these. In Carl's situation, he started this backward movement. This other ball comes in. It moves his ball. If he completes his stroke, his ball was at rest and it was moved. We're going to go ahead and apply this and say that the stroke counts. The ball is not to be replaced. Okay, the ball is not to be replaced. It's not a good situation, but that's the way we would treat that.
You better tell me if I'm getting a swing, and another fairway, some guy comes over, hits the ball in the middle of my downswing, that ball moves and I whiff, you're counted?
You're counted.
Well, you guys are hard.
This gets back into this concept of the rules in the middle are really good.
This is something that's totally out of the player's, and no chance of hitting it up. No chance of hitting it up whatsoever by somebody else moving the ball.
Yeah, there are a lot of situations that we don't like answers to, but the more that we don't like the answer and the more we mess with what's inside, the more we get situations like, well, 18.2, the exception, we would like to have gravity and we didn't. We're moving in a different direction
But
even
that's
further
easy to
now.
put in there, if the ball's moved by outside eight, you're gonna swing, apparently you're gonna hit it.
Well, but there's a lot of things that could happen. And this is one thing. You get out of bounds and it gets very hard to keep playing with things. The decisions book is pretty big. It's pretty big. We're in 1254. So we see this language in 18.2a and in 18.2b. gets you out of the moving ball penalty. Normally, you get a penalty for playing the moving ball. Not in this very unique situation. It doesn't happen that often, but part of the rule, and it's one of those times when you don't need to replace. So I would cover it in that. Okay, so now what? Amy replaces her ball in the putting green and lifts her ball marker. She addresses the ball and not sure if her line backs away. She puts her ball marker back down and realigns her ball. She then removes the ball marker, checks the line a few feet behind the ball, and then the ball moves about a half an inch. So now.
Put it back down again.
So this, she's essentially unaddressed the ball. Okay? This act of, it's not just putting the ball marker down, it's the act of this realignment that has really broken this continuation of the act of address. She puts her ball marker down, she's now allowed to fiddle with her ball. She does that. What's happened now is she's moved back into 18-2A. She's no longer an 18-2B, she's unaddressed it, if you want to look at it that way. Then we'd say, well, she was nowhere near it. No problem. She's going to play the ball from where it moved to. Alan selects a club to play his approach shot, makes a couple practice swings. During one of these practice swings, he accidentally strikes his ball in play and bounces to the nearby bunker. Now what?
Replace it one straight penalty.
Replace it one stroke penalty. And if it's a deep bunker, it's going to take him a long time to get that ball. He can substitute as well. The rule gives you that permission to substitute, and it defines immediately recoverable by decision more than a few seconds. It's going to take you more than a few seconds. You are permitted to substitute, even though the rule says replace the ball. You'll see that under a note at the end of Rule 18. Okay, we're going to move on to a few items that deal with some offerings the USGA has. Might help you in your journey on the rules. The first is something that we actually put out middle of last year. This is whether you are a club professional, whether you just want to be more involved in your club, whether you're a coach or you know coaches, junior golfers. We have a product that is at usga.org/rules/trainers. You can also just find it on our rules pages. I believe I should still be connected to the internet. Very well. So what this is designed to do, there's 12 videos. At the bottom of this page, you'll see that there's trainer's guides, 12 of them. They go along, you can't see that. All right? Very helpful. So these trainer's guides at the bottom walk you through what's in each one of these videos. They walk you through common questions that come up. They walk you through all the scripts. They walk you through the questions that will appear at the beginning and the end. And these videos are designed to allow someone who is not an expert in the rules of golf to teach the rules of golf to others. So if you look at any one of these videos, for example, ball unplayable, it's a fully contained lesson, and what you can do is play through it, and it teaches the ball unplayable rule.
After the travails of Steve Stricker, the third hole.
No, it's under a pine tree. Andy North, you're down there.
Yeah, you know, so many of these edges are so rough. There's not a chance in the world to play this shot.
Now, remember, there are guides that go with these to help you through them. But this question is, it's for you to prompt to walk through how many options does Steve Stricker have? How many options does this rule allow it to use? There's option A, there's option B, there's option C. This is interactive with whatever class you might have, large or small. You'd select either the correct or the incorrect. This is really more of a teaser question to start, to get people thinking about the rule. All of them are designed this way. Then you go into, if you've ever seen our Rules of Golf Explained series, it now plays through
While it doesn't happen often, occasionally the ball will wind up in a position where you realize it's impossible to play it, or where you think it's just not a good idea to try. In such cases, the rules provide you the right to decide your ball is unplayable. The rules make you the sole judge of whether your ball is unplayable. No one is allowed to deny or contest your right to do this. And you can decide your ball is unplayable anywhere on the course, except for one, when it is in a water hazard, where the water hazard rule applies. When you decide your ball is unplayable, for a penalty of 1 stroke, you have 3 choices for how to get it somewhere else where you can play it. The best known and most frequently used of these choices is to drop a ball within 2 club lengths of, and not nearer the hole down, the spot where your unplayable ball lies. You can use any club in your bag to measure the 2 club lengths. Most people use their longest club to make their dropping area as big as possible. The ball you drop can be either your original or a substituted ball. Your second option is to drop behind your unplayable ball in a straight line drawn from the hole through the spot where it lies. When you use this choice, you can drop as far behind your ball's original position as you want. Your third option is to play again from where you made your last stroke. The rules call this playing under stroke and distance. This player's shot has ended in a very bad lie. Dropping it within 2 club lengths, or on a line from the hole behind the ball, will probably not improve his chances to play it. Proceeding under stroke and distance is the best way for this player to be confident his next stroke will be one he can play. If your ball in a bunker is unplayable, and you choose to drop it within 2 club lengths, or on a straight line from the hole behind your ball, you are limited to dropping it in the bunker. When you decide your ball is unplayable, being aware of all 3 of your choices will help you pick the best one available. There is no one choice that is always the best, because the position of your ball and other factors can vary so greatly.
So there's 4 questions. The first one is actually a repeat.
Back to the travails of Steve Stricker, the 3rd hole.
No, it's under a pine tree. Andy North, you're down there. Yeah, you know, some of these edges are so rough. There's not a chance in the world to play this shot.
So how many relief options? 3. Okay, so A, B, and C, we just saw those from the video. Gives you an option to go back to the question. Somebody had a question. Review actually the part of the curriculum that we just saw that tells you how many options
USGA and the R&A jointly govern the game worldwide, administering the rules of golf, rules of amateur status, equipment standards, and world amateur golf rankings.
And you can also, so that was played on the Wi-Fi here. You can actually download these videos to your computer, download Trainer Series videos. If you're going to be in the field, you can actually use these on an iPad, on your phone. So they're meant to be very flexible. Sorry? Yes, well, you can download the entire into an app, and then you can put it on a flash drive. You
my phone would get a lot of this. If the ball lies in the bunker, and I choose, and I want to take relief because of A, an obstruction, B, abnormal ground, or C, unplayable, I can take it out of the bunker in both the first and second instance with no limit to how far back costing me a penalty. The only way I can take the ball out of the bunker in an unplayable case is if I go back to where I played from originally, correct?
You're correct. Yeah, the distinction or the why there, when you have interference from those conditions that we call things unfair, abnormal ground conditions, immovable obstructions, you're provided a free relief option inside the bunker should you choose to take it. If you don't like that option, sometimes the way that those structures are put in there, remember they're things unfair, you don't really have a relief option in the bunker. So the rules give you a one penalty stroke option that you can add to your score to get out. With the ball unplayable, your ball just happens to be in a hazard bunker, and it's in a bad lie. You don't want to play it. And so the rules don't give you that same, you're not entitled to free relief, you already have to accept that penalty. You can't get out under the ball unplayable rule except if your last stroke was out.
Thank you.
So we have a very short segment on floor ball play before we break for lunch. Talk about the stress on the rules of golf. For all the things that are weird, one of the beautiful things about the rules, we have rules of golf. They cover basically you versus a field or you versus an opponent. And then we have these different formats where you can team up with somebody. You can play 2, 3 players, and the rules have to accommodate those situations. They have to play around with how that actually works. And so far as the rules are not in variance with the following specific rules, the rules, as we've already seen them, you look at all the other rules in golf, which is basically 1 through 28, 33 and 34, they apply, unless these specific rules say something different. We first look at match play versus stroke play. Tufts tells us in match play, it's just you and your opponent. The rules treat that relationship very different. You don't have to hole out, you can concede putts. It's a great example. It's just you and your opponent. In stroke play, everybody cares what happens. And for that reason, we need to go ahead and in stroke play, every single competitor in the field has an interest in your play. Every competitor in the field. So we have to treat the rules a little bit differently. And we'll see here, when we get to representation aside, there's a unique difference that accounts for that. It's a strategy-based game in match play. This is an unusual situation in our 4-ball stroke play qualifying. That phrase is at the front of the match play 4-ball and the stroke play 4-ball rules. You can be represented by just one of the 2 players for any or all of the rounds. And at the qualifier that happened out in Hawaii for the 4-ball championship, this young man qualified by himself. His partner couldn't make it. So he and his partner will be playing at Olympic. His partner owes him some airfare or something to get him out there. In match play, if you're not there on a given hole, when any player in the match starts that hole, you cannot join your partner. Match play is a strategy-based game. If I'm teeing off on a hole, and I'm pretty sure that I'm playing one person versus me and my partner's 2 balls, I might be more aggressive. And it's all about who's there right in that environment. So as soon as anybody in the match tees off on a given hole, you can't be joined. You can't join your partner. In stroke play, it's different. You have the entire field. So in stroke play, as long as your partner gets there before you play, your partner can join you. Even if the other 2 players have already teed off. You're playing in a 4-ball. Stroke play, prior to your partner teeing off. Match play, prior to anyone in that match teeing off. Counts for the strategic differences between those 2 forms of play. Balls belonging to the same side may be played in the order the side considers best. So what about concessions in match play? This is a unique part. It's covered by decision. If Brian and I are playing a 4-ball match, and if I'm away and Brian's closer to the hole, Brian can go ahead and play first if he wants to show me the line. That's what this is saying. You play whatever order the side considers best. Assuming I'm away and it's our turn to play, Brian can play. look at these rules, if you have a penalty involved, I recommend you look at Rule 30 or you look at Rule 31. Because there's a lot of rules we saw before, clubs, they apply to the side. Club adjustment, status of the match, that applies to the side. Now, if there's a gentleman, the rules are verbally efficient, grammatically concise, he probably said that here last year. The person who uses that phrase is Larry Startzel. So when we're looking at this type of, say it's display in the rules, the way that this is written, rather than in every single rule saying, in 4-ball, this is how we do it, in 4-ball, this is how we do it, we just put all this stuff in a 4-ball rule, and if there's a penalty that is applied otherwise in the book, you need to look to this rule to see how it's applied in 4-ball stroke play. I'm sorry, 4-ball match play was the last slide. This is 4-ball stroke play. Another gentleman many of you know and can work with. The rules use an economy of words. So it's very tight language, something that Jeff Hall would like to say, but often in his workshops. Same thing in 4-ball stroke play. If there's a penalty, you probably want to look at this rule to make sure that you apply it correctly, whether both players on the side get it or just one. And then finally, last thing we'll cover, 30-3F. If there's no mention of this penalty in all of those previous rules, said it's pretty complicated. There's no mention of a penalty in any of these previous rules. This rule applies. And in match play, if a player's breach of a rule assists his partner, we'll look at this first. What could do possibly assist his partner? You can see the hole that I've put on the green up there in white. The player is marking and lifting a ball while her partner's ball is in motion. There's a rule, 16(1)B, that says you can't do this if it might influence the movement of the ball. She's marking a ball, and based on this other ball in motion, it clearly might influence that ball. So the player is in breach. Now, for those of you that work in 4-ball play, this is a really important thing to know. The rule that I just talked about says might assist, 16(1)B. This rule, how it applies loss of hole penalty, which is just going to disqualify him from the hole. Partner could play, Andrea could play, she was there. There's a strategic decision that was made, possibly. Chuck and Diana may have said, we're going to be aggressive here because Butch isn't here yet. Let's both go for the green. It's our 2 balls against 1 ball. As soon as that first stroke is made, you can't change that strategic decision. You can't go back in time there. In stroke play, is it any different? So in stroke play, Chuck's allowed to play. I'm sorry, Butch is allowed to play, but Butch is still late, right? So Butch is going to get 2. He's going to be teeing off at 3 strokes for Butch. He's there within 5 minutes. He can still play because Butch's partner, Andrea, has not yet hit a stroke on that hole. You can join a partner between holes so long as the partner has not teed off yet. So if we have any time, I would say it's open questions, but I'll leave that to Rob. If we don't have time.
We do have a few minutes for questions.
Yes, sir.
Just in regard to marking of the golf course, I noticed last year at the British Open, they had these wild, overgrown ball drops. And you come to a tour event like the Honda last week or 2 weeks ago, and they had a lot of guys dropping balls, and they actually, because they were playing the ball, and they were placing the ball on a well-groomed. And so where is the USGA between what the R&A did last year and what the tour does have to do with it?
Well, so what was going on at the Open last year, Open Championship, was those were TIO dropping zones.
Oh.
So it was kind of a championship structures. They're temporary in nature. The philosophy there, and the tours don't use many dropping zones, but when they do, there's a desire to try to mimic the conditions the ball would have been in. So if a TIO is in bad country, you're going to try to put the dropping zone, which is going to give that player free relief in a similar situation. If you're giving a player relief from a water hazard via a dropping zone, you don't want to put the player in a situation like that. They're accepting a penalty stroke. You're giving them an opportunity to drop and have a halfway decent lie. So it's trying to mimic what was there, which is why those were so hairy. And we do that at the Open as well.
Can you explain the ruling that Tiger Woods received at the Masters for that one? Can you explain that whole ruling?
You know, there's a lot that went into it. There is a lengthy paper on the website that actually covers all that happened. But ultimately, what ended up happening was the committee knew they should have talked to Tiger. They didn't. They kind of let him get away with a penalty. And if you think about how that would play out, I knew that you incurred a penalty, but I didn't want to tell you about it. And then now that the competition's closed, it turns out that, oh my gosh, you realized you just had an issue, and so we're just going to go ahead and disqualify you. That was not a good result for golf or for Tiger or for anybody. And so that's an exceptional situation. Long story short, he still gets the penalty.